This episode is sponsored by Bow Lake, the most beautiful paddle boards in the world. Visit bowlake.com and learn more. That's B-E-A-U lake.com. Beau is French for beautiful. B-E-A-U lake.com.
You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Champagne producers have a good reason to pop the bubbly this year, as demand for the French sparkling wine skyrocketed across the globe. Consumers around the world, and especially in the United States, have been increasingly reaching for bottles of champagne. Few champagne producers have a higher reputation than Krug, one of the region's top champagne houses. Founded by Joseph Krug in 1843, Krug sits at the apex of the world's most expensive champagnes by remaining true to its heritage and 180-year-old vision. My guest on the luxury item is Manuel Reman, president of Krug. Manuel began his career with Boston Consulting Group in France before spending the next 2 decades in a number of different roles at Moet Hennessy, the parent company of Krug Champagne. Prior to assuming the position of president of Krug in 2022, Manuel was the managing director of Moet Hennessy Champagne Services. Welcome to the luxury item, Manuel.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. Well, it seems the much buzzed about demand for champagne isn't just hype. It's the real thing, and Americans are leading the charge. Last year, 33 million bottles of bubbly were shipped to America from the French region. That's 31% increase from 2019 and the highest amount shipped anywhere outside of France. So what is driving that demand?
Well, this is music to my ears, Scott. I think it's great news for the US and it's great news for Champagne. Well, I guess it's great news for the US because, champagne consumption is usually pairing with the economic health of a country, limited unemployment, high level of activity, desire to go out and to enjoy. I think it's great for the US to see this surge in demand. But I think that, beyond all these economic drivers, I think that there is something about champagne. It's a fantastic news also for champagne because, during the COVID, consumption in restaurants disappeared, but it transferred to at-home consumption. So I guess that most of the consumers discovered or maybe rediscovered champagne. No, they opened a bottle at home. I mean, I opened a lot of bottles at home with my friends and my family when they were able to come back and visit me. And, I think people realized that champagne was much more than a celebration. They tried it as a aperitif or to celebrate, but, they discovered also that it can pair amazingly well with food. It can also go with more casual occasions, such as small dinners or brunch. And I guess it's a good news for champagne. It means that it's not just a celebration product, I guess.
Perhaps people are rediscovering the power of positivity of champagne.
Yes, correct. People want to gather. People want to have something to share. They want to, and champagne creates a specific moment. It's true that sometimes you open a bottle of champagne because it's a specific moment, but sometimes when you open a bottle of champagne, you make it a memorable moment. That's what I try to do with my friends. Sometimes they just come and visit or with my family. And when suddenly I open a bottle of champagne, well, specifically a bottle of Krug, I think it becomes a specific moment, a moment that you will always remember.
I was reading that some producers say they are having sourcing issues and are expecting a decline in volume for the next couple of years. Given the fact that champagne by its nature takes several years to mature, that shortfall isn't obvious yet. But if the public appetite for bubbly remains strong, and all signs kind of suggest that it could. So what's the supply situation at Krug?
Well, no, that's true. That's a reality. But before I talk about Krug, maybe one comment on the general champagne situation. Most of champagne producers, they keep their bottles 2-3 years in the cellars. Mm-hmm. So you produce more or less what you expect to sell in 3 years. For Krug, it's more or less 7 to 10 years. And before COVID, champagne consumption was around 280, 290 million bottles. And now it's stabilizing around, let's say, 320, 325 million of bottles. So most of the producers, they were not ready for this demand. So, and on top of that, I don't know if you're aware of that, but we had 2 very limited yields in the harvest 2020 and 2021. So I think it's a reality. And But for Krug, it's specific. I guess we have 7 to 10 years of stock. Because we age our bottles much longer, and we have a significant amount of reserve wines. I think it helps us in a way, to compensate for the ups and downs of the demand and also of nature. I'm not worried about the Krug situation. Of course, we are not going to grow by 5 or 10%, but I don't expect to have a decline in the coming years.
And Krug is one of France's most iconic champagne houses and gets credit for being one of the early creators of the, now standard non-vintage house blend. So in your own words, what is it about Krug that makes it so special?
Well, thank you for these positive comments, Scott. I think we owe everything to our founder, Joseph Krug. He founded Krug in 1843. He was already working in a champagne house, but he was frustrated. New companies, usually they come from a frustration, and Joseph was frustrated with two things. Basically, he was frustrating that in Champagne at that time, you were only able to produce great champagne 2 or 3 years in a decade because of the climate variation. And the remaining 7 years, well, you were doing so-so. So he was frustrated with that, and then he was also frustrated with he was a lover of champagne, but champagne in all its diversity. He was a lover of young, fresh, vibrant Chardonnay, and also more mature Chardonnay with this toasty notes. He was a lover of Pinot Meunier, flowery notes, and the structure, the strong, powerful Pinot Noir. But he was not able to find a champagne that will gather everything in one glass. So basically, he quit his company and he founded Krug with this dream of offering every year the most generous expression of champagne, regardless of the weather condition. So I think everything Joseph wrote at that time, it's something that we are trying to fight for, to carry on, his legacy and his dream. So basically, we with the Krug Grande Cuvée, we try every year, to offer the most generous. And when I say generous, is at the same time to have this young, fresh expression of younger wines from Chardonnay or for Cézanne, but also the more mature expression of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and also the lively Pinot Meunier. So if you love champagne, you want to have all of it in one glass, and that's what we try to do at Krug. And I guess it is what Krug lovers, consumers love and make and find it's so special.
And LVMH acquired Krug in 1999, and Olivier Krug, the 6th generation of the Krug family, is still involved. I believe he's director of the house. Does Krug maintain the same creative and strategic independence as other LVMH maisons?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Krug was already part of another group before being acquired by LVMH. So I think now that Krug is part of a big group, LVMH is a big group, and Krug is so small. And the financial success of LVMH does not depend on Krug. So we have a lot of freedom. Basically the only question we have is, are you demanding enough? Are you protecting enough the legacy of Joseph Krug? We don't have questions about financial or volume growth. I think they understand that Krug is a small treasury, a jewel that you need to protect. But it's not so. Yes, to answer your question, we are very independent in that term, but of course we benefit from the financial power from LVMH. I think we've invested a lot in reserve wine tanks. We are investing in a new wine facility. It's a 30 million euros project. We will not be able to do it by ourselves. So I think it's great, and we also benefit from LVMH experts in sustainable development, in IT, in food safety, and of course we benefit from the distribution network. So it's easier for us to be present in more countries than if we were just a standalone company.
Speaking of LVMH, for all of 2022 and the first 3 months of this year, LVMH reported strong sales and profits, with wine and spirits champagne business driving significant growth. How did Krug fare in the mix with the other wine and spirits maisons?
Yeah, that's right. But I can't give you any financial specifics, about Krug. But what I can tell you is that we sold end of April the exactly same amount of bottles than last year at the same time. So as I said, we are not expecting a decline, but we can't grow. We could grow if we had the bottles, but unfortunately we don't have them. If we had the bottles, we would be expecting growth of maybe 15 or 20%, but we don't have them, unfortunately. Maybe to give you more details about where this growth is coming from, we can see that there is a demand that is growing in places where we are not present before.
Like where?
Maybe like for instance, Chile. We are not selling any bottle in Chile, and last like a few months ago, a young sommelier from Chile contacted me directly and said, "Well, Manuel, there is no bottle of Krug in Chile, and there are a lot of people asking for them." So we decided to send 50 bottles. It's not a lot, but it's the beginning, and that's it. And in the US, for instance, we were very strong in New York, in Chicago, in Dallas, for instance. But now we are opening some accounts in Austin, in Houston, in Washington D.C., and in California, for instance, not only in San Francisco, Los Angeles, but also in Santa Elena, in Hillsburg, New Orleans. So that's a type of examples why there is a growing demand. More and more people from more and more diverse territories or communities or culture are asking for champagne, and specifically for Krug.
And from what I understand, the house owns around 1/3 of the vineyards used for its annual production needs, while the rest of the grapes are provided by a few dozen loyal growers. Is that type of arrangement unique for a champagne house?
Well, in Champagne, usually, 90% of the vineyard is owned by individual growers, who sell their grapes to houses. At Krug, you're true, it's approximately 25% of our needs that is coming from our own vineyard. And for the remaining, we work with very loyal growers. So this is pretty common in Champagne. What is very specific to Krug, and what makes Krug unique in a way, is that we work on specific plots with the growers. We follow the plots all year long. We visit them several times a year, and we decide when to pick the grape. We decide the date of the harvest, and we vinify each wine individually. So this is great for the growers because they are able to taste the product of their work 3, 6, or 7 months after the harvest. So that's why I guess they are loyal. We are very demanding, but on the same way, they feel part of the process. They are not just suppliers.
So the iconic Krug Grande Cuvée in various manifestations is really at the heart of the House of Krug and comprises the majority of its production. Can you explain to listeners why its flagship Grande Cuvée is the archetype of Krug's philosophy of craftsmanship?
Yes, that's true. At Krug, we really strive to craft every year a new edition of Grande Cuvée. As I said at the beginning, this is the symbol of the dream of our founder, Joseph Krug. He wanted to offer every year the most generous expression of champagne. So that's what we try to do. Let's maybe give you an example. The edition of Grande Cuvée we are presenting now to the public is the 171st edition of Grande Cuvée. It was created after the Harvest 2015. And the Harvest 2015 was a very warm year. So we had fantastic Pinot Noir and very charming Chardonnay, but lacking of acidity. So that's exactly the job of our wine cellar master, Julie Cavil. So she was building on the elements from the Harvest 2015, and she looked in the library of reserve wines. We've got 150 different reserve wines, and she looked into the library in order to craft the most generous expression of champagne, which means that we will take some cooler and colder years to take some Chardonnay, and also to have some Pinot Meunier from 2008, 2010, for instance. And like that 171st edition of Grande Cuvée is a blend of 130 approximately wines from 12 different years, the youngest being from 2015 and the oldest from 2000. So it takes 23 years now to craft a bottle of Krug Grande Cuvée. So this is exactly the symbol of what we are trying to do at Krug.
And cellar master Julie Cavil, who is the first female cellar master for the
Correct.
house, has been a member of the winemaking team for about 2 decades. I would imagine it's a long, detailed, and arduous process. How does Ms. Cavil uphold Krug's revered legacy while maintaining a forward-facing, sustainable mindset?
Well, I guess there are 2 questions in your question. The first one is how do we make sure we ensure the legacy and the craftsmanship? I think, as you said, she started in 2006 at Krug, so she's been part of the process. She was in charge of Claude Duménil in her youngest years. So I would say it's very easy to carry on the legacy in terms of craftsmanship. Now, when it comes to sustainability, I think, I would love to say that Joseph Krug, in the way he invented a new craft, he was sustainable at the beginning. His first motto was to work really precisely, to work quality and not quantity, and to express the diversity of terroir. So if your viticulture is intensive with a lot of herbicides, pesticides, you get standard grapes, standard wines. And so there is nothing vibrant, nothing unique. So I think if we want to achieve what we try to do at Krug, we need to be not to use any chemical products. I think it will be a nonsense to try to use chemical products. We will be killing the diversity and the individualities of different plots.
Yeah.
I think we need to protect and respect nature. But it's never enough. We have a lot of commitments, and in 1 week from now, I will gather the executive committee and all the team at Krug, and because there is a commitment with targets and ambitious objectives to 2025, and some of them are already achieved. So we need to build new objectives, and so now it's a continuous improvement. We need to be very strong on that.
We'll be right back after a quick break with more of my conversation with Manuel Reman.
Bow Lake and Rocky Shore. I will return once more. Yes, I will. Boom, diddy, boom, boom. Boom, diddy, boom, boom, boom. All right.
The world's most beautiful paddleboards. Bow Lake. The water is calling.
We're back with more from Manuel Reman.
So you officially came on board as the new president of Krug in early 2022. You spent many years at its parent company, Moet Hennessy, in various roles, most recently as managing director of Moet Hennessy Champagne Services. So in your role as president, when you first started, what have you been tasked to do?
To be honest, I didn't get any mission letter. When I met Bernard Arnault, he just wanted to make sure I was passionate enough to take the challenge, but he didn't tell me to do this or this. And but when I arrived, of course, I did an analysis of the situation, and you are always, trying to find if there is something that needs to be fixed urgently. And at Krug, I knew it was not the case. It's always easier when you arrive as CEO to arrive in a burning platform.
Right.
You arrive as a hero. That was not the case. So I knew I was arriving in a very healthy situation in terms of champagne, in terms of team, in terms of image of the house. So it was a very healthy situation. But so we are, as I said earlier, on the sustainability, we are working on a continuous improvement basis. Every day we ask questions about what can we do better, what can we accelerate, how can we improve, and the goals that we are setting to ourselves is to have, of course, an even more precise and generous expression of champagne. Craftsmanship is at the basis of everything. I would say the second ambition will be around sustainability, as I said earlier. And the last one, to be even more connected to Krug lovers. We must talk to them even in a more emotionally way. We mustn't, if they have questions about techniques, we can answer. But I guess, as you said in your first question, people are more and more looking for emotions, experiences. So I think this will be our goal.
The Krug family seems to have a long association with music. There have been a number of Krug initiatives that illuminate the passion through pairings of champagnes with different music compositions. What are the parallels between the art of making champagne and music, and in what ways has Krug brought it to life?
That's a good question, Scott, and that's a question I asked the team when I arrived. And honestly, now I understand. I think at Krug we like to compare wines with musicians. So this is very easy. Every plot we harvest is a musician, and every year our cellar master Julie, she's the orchestra conductor. She has to audition 250 different musicians from the harvest. So she will select some of them for the music of the year, to play in the orchestra, and she will send other wines, other musicians into the reserve wines for future orchestras. So she also has 150, a little bit more, 150 musicians from the reserve from previous years, to sum up with the wines from the year. So she works as a selection. She creates a full orchestra from, as I said, the bright Chardonnay, a violin, for instance, to the generous drum of Pinot Noir, or the Pinot Meunier will be more the triangle. It's not something that is that is key in the blend, but without the Meunier, you will miss something. It's like the triangle in the orchestra. So we love to play with this analogy. It makes it easier for non-experts to understand our craft. And as I said earlier, we love at Krug to talk about our craftsmanship without talking techniques.
Did that connection to music start back when Joseph Krug started the house?
No, not exactly. A little bit later, and I think it's really in the 70s that when Henri Krug and Remy Krug started to say that their job is really like the one of a conductor. And then the analogy started, and we are working on this analogy. And now, we are even playing with, we are going further. We bring this in, to life through music pairing experience. It works like a food pairing experience, but
Right.
we believe that there are some music which are the perfect expression, I would say, of the emotions you have when you taste Krug. So we try to pair Krug with sometimes jazz, sometimes classical music, opera, or it can be electronic music. It's quite playful, I would say.
So the strong post-COVID rebound of the champagne industry seems to reinforce the consumer premiumization trend that people are spending more on better, looking for ways to add luxury and celebration to their daily lives. Though not exclusive to this category, premiumization becomes incredibly relevant here. Are you seeing palates becoming more refined with consumers looking for specific champagnes with a story to tell?
Yeah, that's true. People are. You said that people are spending more on better. I would say yes, but what I see is also people spending more on experiences, and they want moments that they can share and they can remember. They are not just buying an item or consume something. What we can see at that Krug lovers are more and more interested in the concept of editions, for instance. Some people will say one edition is the same thing as the next edition. You present it every year, a new edition, but actually they want to understand what was different from the year 2014 to the year 2015, for instance, and why you had 130 wines in the 171st edition and 190 in the 170th edition. So what I try to say is that they want to understand more and more deeply what they are buying, what they are experiencing. They want to understand better. They want to have something to share, something to tell. And it's great news. I mean, they want to have a better culture.
How is Krug finding new ways to engage with champagne lovers and grow market share?
Well, we are not unfortunately trying to find a new market share because we are very small and we don't have a lot of ability to grow. But it's true that we are trying to connect even more with our Krug lovers. One example will be the Krug ID. The Krug ID is something that was invented approximately a little bit more than 10 years ago. It's a 6-digit number that is on the back of every bottle. And if you go on the Krug app or on Google, you can find the details and the explanation of what you have in your glass. And you can also find food pairing, of course, and obviously music pairings. So it's a great way to connect with them, to give them more knowledge and more depth into what they are tasting. So this is one example. Another example is the work we do with a lot of chefs around the world, Krug Ambassade. We play with a single ingredient. Every year, we ask the chef to play around one ingredient. So this year, this is the lemon. Last year, it was the rice, and before that, the onion. So it's really playful, and it's the chef are sharing some recipes. So it's a way to talk about something else than just wine, technicity, pH, or chemistry. It's about giving them a way to experience something.
All the current stats about wine sales show that older generations in America and Europe are still drinking wine, but there has been a fall off in sales to the Gen Xers and young people in general, for whom the market is crucial to allow growth. However, it seems younger people are taking to sparkling wines like Prosecco, which has a reputation for being price accessible, versatile, and approachable. Do you think the champagne houses have to do a better job at attracting millennials?
Well, I think everybody needs to do a better job at maybe not attracting, but I would say at connecting with millennials. they are not interested by the same type of thing, and not all of them want to become champagne or wine experts. So it's necessary for us to understand them, and so in that way to talk to them. I go often to business schools or to young people or young school enology team to, of course, to share what is Krug, but also because I love to hear their questions. And when I come back to Krug after that, it's always refreshing. It's always you have new questions and new directions in which to work. It's great. We need to connect with them, I guess, with music. We are not only working with classical music, we are working with also electronic music. And I think the way we talk about gastronomy, that's what they say actually. It's really it's poetic, it's witty, it's not serious in a way. So I think it's something we need to do even more. Reveal the modernity in champagne. I think it's our duty.
Just like every other food item, champagne grapes are not immune to climate change. Average temperatures are continuing to climb, and concerns are growing in the champagne wine industry about the prospect of losing the characteristic qualities of its famous bubbles, which rely on acidity and vivacity. How has Krug been preparing for the effects of climate change?
Yes, that's the question we have with the team actually. We can feel the effect of climate change, that's for sure, with the date of harvest that becomes sooner and sooner. Maybe not this year. We might have harvest mid-September, but still, if you look at the average, we've lost 1 month, or we are 1 month sooner than the decade before. But at Krug, I would say that we are pretty immune to its effect so far. I think this relies into the fact that we have this philosophy of looking at plot by plot or small plot by small plot. So if during the tasting 1 year, we believe that there is one plot which is too much exposed to the sun or to the heat, we decide that we need to change and maybe switch to another plot that will be less exposed or more northern facing. So it's easier, I would say, for us to do a kind of amortization of climatic change. I think what is going to touch us as everybody is the climatic variation, such as frost, storms, hail that we could have during the viticultural season. So I see more concern on quantity than on quality.
And consumers are also concerned about climate change too. So what are you doing to communicate that to the consumer about all the strides you're taking?
Well, as I said earlier, we are doing a lot, but to be honest, we have not chosen to communicate a lot on this. I think there is a lot of greenwashing all over the industry, not only in Champagne, but in the wine industry or more globally. And we just want to challenge ourselves. We ask also our employees to challenge ourselves, to challenge us. We ask some NGO to challenge us, but we are not communicating a lot. I think if Krug lovers ask us some specific questions, we answer, but we do not want to be it to be at a selling point, I would say.
Right.
Are we using herbicides? No, of course we are not. Are we? Do we have to say it? I believe we don't. Maybe those who use herbicides should put it on the label. I think it's everybody should be at the highest standard, and those who are not should be blamed and shamed for that.
Celebrated Grammy and Oscar-winning composer and a longtime Krug lover, Ryuichi Sakamoto, sadly passed away recently. He had just teamed up with the House of Krug to compose a symphony dedicated to 3 Krug champagnes from the year 2008. Can you share how that partnership came about, the experience he created, and what he meant to the House of Krug?
Well, that's true. That's a tragedy. It's still difficult to talk about it. We knew Ryuichi was ill, but still, when the news came, it was a shock for us. So it was difficult to carry on talking about it. But still, if I remember this time, it was 4 years ago when the team started to connect with him, and we discovered he was a Krug lover. The idea was to ask him to translate his emotions of drinking Krug champagne into music. And Ryuichi was a perfect choice, not only because he was a Krug lover, but also because he was a film music composer. And what I love in his music that they transcript the emotions of the film, of the movie. So he was perfect. He did that. It was a journey of 2 to 3 years. And the conclusion and the result was a symphony in 3 acts, 3 movements, with a soloist to pair with or to express his emotions, tasting the Krug Clos 2000 2008. Then it was a small ensemble movement for the Krug 2008 vintage. And finally, a full orchestra music for the Grande Cuvée. So it was 33 minutes. Of course, you can find
I did.
those musics in Spotify. Yes, I love it. I love it too.
So we talked about this earlier. Champagne is a beverage that symbolizes all that is positive in life, celebration, love, happiness, and also paired to any moment in your life. How do you see champagne interwoven with life today?
Well, this is true. People often associate champagne to success, celebration, a birth, or also romantic date. But I think more and more champagne is seen in other occasions, more casual. We talked earlier about the brunch or the casual dinner with your friends. I think people want to make every moment count, and it is even more true after COVID. You want to make every moment count and every moment an emotion. And maybe also not only the COVID, but maybe also Instagram has boosted, I would say, this desire to make every moment specific and shareable. So I would suggest you, Scott, or maybe your auditors, to open a bottle of Grande Cuvée for your next dinner. I hope it will make it unforgettable.
So what are Krug's ambitions in the coming years?
I said I will maybe repeat myself, but three ambitions. The first one is craftsmanship with no compromise, and we need to be even more precise and even more generous in our Grande Cuvée. And of course, increase transparency. We need to have a Krug ID, a new version of Krug ID with even more information and transparency. Second objective will be sustainability. And of course, third objective to make Krug available maybe to new territories, new cultures, new communities, or new generations. This is our duty. I mean, we love Krug, I love Krug, and I want to have a Krug shared with the greatest number of people.
It's almost like I'd like to buy the world a Coke, but with champagne.
Correct.
So my final question, Manuel, is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation to get you off that island, or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody to get you off that island.
Okay.
It says you, sand, palm trees, miles and miles and miles of ocean. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
Well, you might find it's not a luxury item, but I saved a lot of. I've saved rent during many months to be able to afford it. It's my bike, because I have two passions in life: wine and bike and sport. So I would take my bike, and if you still say it's not a luxury item, ask my wife. She says it's a luxury item. So this will be my answer, Scott.
Manuel Reman, president of Krug, thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.